And in other words, we could then say, without a shadow of a doubt, Jerry McGinley was dead from the 13th of August 2000. We actually had to choreograph the arrests to a time when we knew that our main suspects would be in Enniskillen town. That took place on the 21st of March 2001. On that morning, detectives went to Julie McGinley's house and discovered her with her lover, Mick Monaghan.
Are you in a position to tell Mrs. McGinley whether or not her husband's been located?
His body has not been located at this time.
So, this isn't a missing persons investigation anymore? This is a murder investigation?
Your client has been arrested for murder.
He'd have been going to England regularly. He had his own work as well. His work schedule would have built up.
Well, that doesn't get him out of the picture. You wanted him offside.
And how would that give me motive?
I'll give you a motive. Why did Julie McGinley increase her husband's life insurance to £380,000 a couple of months before he disappeared? There's 380,000 motives.
Your husband walks out the door, you allege, at 7 a.m. on Sunday the 13th of August. And by the 17th you have completely redecorated the bedroom. Now, what was your reason for redecorating that bedroom?
I don't know what was my reason.
Why were you redecorating it?
Why does anyone redecorate? To improve?
What motive do you have to kill your husband?
I'm advising Julie not to answer that. There's no evidence that her husband is dead.
We'll address that issue.
As far as my client is concerned, there is no evidence to prove that her husband is dead.
Was your love affair with Michael Monaghan the motive for committing this murder?
I'm advising my client not to answer that question.
We know that you and Jerry had a violent marriage. Were you driven to kill your husband?
I'm advising my client not to answer that question.
Julie, I'm asking you that question.
So you really think that I think that much of a woman I would murder her husband?
You murdered her husband.
And if I did, that I would hang around with her? I don't think so. I don't think so. I know I've made mistakes.
You're having a love affair.
For love, you'd murder someone?
Has happened in the past.
Must be some love. Must be some love.
He was a thorn in your side.
There are easier ways of getting him than murder.
He was a thorn in the side for both you and Julie. You needed him offside, okay? So eventually you murdered him. And since the murder, you have concealed evidence, you have destroyed evidence, particularly the week after August 13th. Is there anything further you want to say?
On Sunday, the 3rd of June 2001, 10 months after the disappearance of Jerry McGinley, a small child accidentally stumbled over what was to become the last piece in the puzzle.
Mommy!
They went to their mum and said, "Mum, we think we found a sheep's skeleton." But the lady was actually a nurse herself, and when she went and looked at what was wrapped in the black plastic, she realised it was a human skull. They then reported that to the guards, and the guards then went to that very remote area and did an excellent job in relation to the scene preservation there, and the body was recovered. It had been completely stripped of all clothing and jewellery and wrapped in black plastic.
In cases like this, where you're dealing with somebody who's been dead for some considerable time, there's obviously going to be deterioration of the body. In some cases that means that the flesh will disappear from the body and you'll be left with just the bony skeleton. In this particular case, the teeth were well preserved, and if there were dental records, particularly relating to this man McGinley, who had been missing from the north, then it was very possible that that would confirm his identity.
The discovery of a dental plate still within the skull of the body confirmed it. Jerry McGinley had been found. The police had their suspects, motives, and now their victim.
The court case commenced in early September of 2002, which was over a year after the actual body had been discovered.
Over the next 13 weeks, the jury would listen to Julie and Michael Monaghan protest their innocence, while the prosecution laid out a compelling case for the true events of that night.
On the night that Jerry McGinley got murdered, they travelled to the hotel where they met up with her lover, Mick Monaghan, and his friend. Julie didn't drink very much that night. We believe that it was already known by the two murderers that he was to be killed that night. When they get home, Heather Edwards is left down to her house. We then have the telephone contact which takes place to the place where Julie's lover is, the Fort Lodge Hotel. And we have the telephone contact back from the Fort Lodge Hotel to Jerry Rackham. We also have the mobile telephone call from her lover, Mick Monaghan, to the house, which would have given Mick Monaghan time to have gone from the Fort Lodge Hotel back to collect his van. We believe he travelled to the house that night, and that Jerry McGinley was murdered in his own bed, in his own bedroom that night.
No one can be exactly sure what happened in the bedroom that night. If Jerry did not die at the hands of his wife and her lover directly, he certainly died at their will, and all the while his two young children lay sleeping merely steps away.
The body would have had to have been transported from the house and then deposited in Ballinamore. These were people who were running the furniture business and had access to vans.
Julie McGinley and Michael Monaghan were both sentenced to 15 years in prison for their parts in the murder of Jerry McGinley.
Jerry McGinley's mother, Betty, wept in the public gallery. Outside the court, his father, Jerry Sr., described the term as immaterial.
It means nothing. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't bring us back to where we were a couple of years ago. It's a sad day, but she's still my daughter-in-law.